The most dangerous place in your life may not be a dark street, a bad job, or a difficult situation. It may be the place where you feel completely safe. Because every time you say, "I'll do it when I feel ready," your comfort zone becomes a little stronger, and you become a little more afraid to leave it. And here is the scary part. Your comfort zone does not destroy your dreams suddenly. It does it quietly, one missed opportunity at a time.
Alex, that sounds uncomfortable already, because I think I do this a lot. I want to try new things, I want to speak English confidently, but when the moment actually comes, I suddenly think, what if I fail? What if people laugh at me? What if I embarrass myself?
Exactly. And those three questions have stopped millions of people from becoming the person they could have been. But by the end of this conversation, I want you to understand something important. Fear is not always telling you to stop. Sometimes fear is showing you exactly where you need to go. And you'll also learn three powerful English expressions. Step out of your comfort zone, challenge yourself, and try something new. But Sarah, there is one mistake people make when they try to become more confident, and we'll come to that in a moment.
Okay, first tell me something. What exactly is a comfort zone? Because people use that phrase all the time.
Good question. Your comfort zone is the mental space where everything feels familiar. You know what to expect. You know how people will react. You know what you're good at. And because there is less uncertainty, you feel safe. For example, imagine you understand English quite well when you are alone. You watch videos, you read books, you listen to podcasts. But when someone suddenly asks you a question in English, your mind freezes.
That happens to me. I know the answer, but suddenly my brain says, no English available.
Exactly. And then you switch back to your native language, not because you know zero English, but because speaking publicly is outside your comfort zone. Now, here's our first expression. Step out of your comfort zone. It means to do something that feels unfamiliar, difficult, or slightly scary in order to grow. For example, I decided to step out of my comfort zone and speak English at the meeting.
So I can say, I need to step out of my comfort zone and talk to new people.
Perfect. Or, she stepped out of her comfort zone and gave a presentation in English. Notice something important. We don't usually say, jump completely out of your comfort zone and become fearless overnight. Growth normally happens one small step at a time.
So if I'm terrified of public speaking, I shouldn't immediately go and speak in front of 5,000 people?
Probably not. Start with 5 people, then 10, then 20. Confidence grows when your brain sees evidence that you can survive uncomfortable situations. And this is where most people get confidence completely wrong.
What do people get wrong about confidence?
They wait for confidence before taking action. They say, when I become confident, I'll speak English. When I stop feeling nervous, I'll apply for that job. When I feel ready, I'll start my business. But confidence usually comes after action, not before it.
Wait, so I have to do the scary thing while I'm still scared?
Exactly. Think about riding a bicycle. Did you first become completely confident and then learn to ride? No, you felt uncertain, you lost balance, maybe you fell, and slowly your brain learned, I can do this. That experience created confidence. The same thing happens with English. You don't become a confident speaker by thinking about speaking. You become a confident speaker by speaking, even badly at first.
That sounds simple, but when you're actually in front of people, fear feels very real.
Of course it does. Fear of change is real. Your brain likes predictability. When something is familiar, your brain can say, I know this, I understand this, I can control this. But when you try something new, your brain cannot predict the result, so it sends a warning, be careful. Unfortunately, many people interpret that warning as, don't do it.
So fear doesn't always mean danger.
Exactly. Sometimes it simply means, this is new. Let me give you a sentence I want you to remember. Discomfort is not always a warning sign. Sometimes it is a growth sign. And that brings us to our second expression, challenge yourself. To challenge yourself means to deliberately do something that requires extra effort or courage. For example, I challenge myself to speak English 10 minutes every day.
Can I say, this month I'm challenging myself to speak English with strangers?
Excellent. And notice how powerful that sounds. You're no longer waiting for life to test you. You're choosing your own challenge. But there is something even more important, because challenging yourself in the wrong way can actually make your fear worse.
How can challenging yourself make fear worse?
Imagine someone who is terrified of speaking English publicly. Tomorrow they force themselves to give a 30-minute speech to a huge audience. They forget their words, they panic, they feel embarrassed. What lesson might their brain learn?
Public speaking is horrible. Never do that again.
Exactly. That's why you need what I call small discomfort. Something difficult enough to stretch you, but not so difficult that you completely shut down. Let's use our formula: problem, explanation, solution, example, practice. Problem: you're afraid to speak English in public. Explanation: you're trying to avoid embarrassment. Solution: choose a small speaking challenge. Example: instead of giving a long speech, ask one question in English during a class, or order coffee in English, or send a 30-second voice message. Practice: do one small, uncomfortable thing every day.
That actually feels possible.
Exactly. Remember, making mistakes is not proof that your English is bad. Mistakes are proof that you are using your English. And if you're using your English, you're giving your brain a chance to improve.
But why do mistakes feel so embarrassing? I can make a mistake while writing alone and I don't care. But if I pronounce something wrong in front of people, I remember it for 3 years.
Because public mistakes feel social. Your brain starts imagining what other people think. Maybe they think I'm stupid. Maybe they noticed my grammar. Maybe my pronunciation sounded terrible. But here is a question. When someone who is learning your language makes a small mistake, what do you think?
Usually I understand what they mean. Sometimes I don't even notice the mistake.
Exactly. We imagine people are judging us much more than they actually are. And even when somebody notices your mistake, so what? You are learning. The person making mistakes in a second language is already doing something courageous. But Sarah, there is another trap that keeps people inside their comfort zones for years, and it sounds very intelligent.
What trap?
Preparation.
Preparation is bad?
No, but endless preparation can become a beautiful excuse for avoiding action. Think about English learners. Some people study grammar for years. They memorize vocabulary. They watch hundreds of videos. They download apps. They buy courses. They keep saying, I need to improve a little more before I speak. 5 years later, they're still preparing to speak.
Oh, that one hurts.
And the problem isn't knowledge, it's avoidance. They're using preparation to stay comfortable. Here's the test. Ask yourself, am I learning this because I need it? Or am I learning this because learning feels safer than doing?
That's a powerful question.
Let's use our third expression. Try something new. Very simple, but very powerful. For example, I'm going to try something new and join an English speaking club. Why don't you try something new this weekend? She tried something new and discovered that she loved it. Now say this with me.
Okay.
I want to step out of my comfort zone.
I want to step out of my comfort zone.
I need to challenge myself.
I need to challenge myself.
Today, I will try something new.
Today, I will try something new.
Again, but this time, don't just repeat the words. Think of one real situation in your life. Maybe speaking English, meeting someone new, applying for something, learning a skill. Then say, today, I will try something new.
Today, I will try something new.
Good, because language becomes more memorable when it connects to your real life. Now, we need to talk about what happens inside your mind just before you do something uncomfortable. because there's a tiny moment, sometimes only a few seconds, that decides whether you grow or run away.
What moment?
The moment between thinking about something and talking yourself out of it. Imagine you're in a room. Someone asks, "Does anyone want to answer this question in English?" You know the answer. For 1 second, you think, "I could answer." Then another voice appears. What if my pronunciation is wrong? What if everyone looks at me? Maybe someone else will answer. And suddenly, the opportunity is gone.
Yes, that whole conversation happens incredibly fast.
Exactly. Your comfort zone is often protected by hesitation. So instead of debating with yourself for 2 minutes, practice taking small action quickly. For example, you want to ask someone a question in English. Ask it before your brain creates 10 reasons not to. You want to introduce yourself. Start with, "Hi, I'm Sarah." You want to record yourself speaking. Press record. Don't wait until you feel perfect.
So the goal isn't to eliminate nervous thoughts.
No. The goal is to stop obeying every nervous thought. There is a big difference. A thought can say, "You might fail," and you can answer, "Maybe, but I'm still going to try." A thought can say, "Your English isn't perfect." You can answer, "True, that's why I'm practicing." A thought can say, "People might judge you." You can answer, "They might. I'm doing it anyway."
That sounds like courage.
That's exactly what courage is. Courage is not feeling zero fear. Courage is deciding that something matters more than the fear. Now, let's make this practical. Try this with me. Complete this sentence. I normally avoid blank because it makes me uncomfortable. Think about your answer. Now complete, this week I will challenge myself to blank. And finally, to step out of my comfort zone, I will blank.
Mine would be, I normally avoid speaking English in groups because it makes me uncomfortable. This week, I will challenge myself to speak at least once. And to step out of my comfort zone, I will stop waiting for perfect sentences.
Excellent. And that last sentence is important because perfection is one of the most comfortable hiding places fear has ever created. But let me tell you a story about someone who learned this the hard way.
Was this one of your students?
Yes. His name was Daniel. Daniel had studied English for almost 6 years. His grammar was excellent. His vocabulary was impressive. When I gave him written exercises, he often scored higher than everyone else. But there was one strange problem.
He couldn't speak?
He could speak, he just wouldn't. Whenever we had a group conversation, Daniel became quiet. If I asked him directly, he gave short answers. Yes, no, maybe. And then one day I asked him, "Daniel, why do you become so quiet when we speak English?" He looked at me and said, "Because everyone thinks I'm good at English. If I speak and make mistakes, they'll discover I'm not as good as they think."
Wow, so his good English actually created more pressure.
Exactly. He wasn't afraid of English. He was afraid of losing an image. He wanted to look competent, and staying quiet protected that image. So I gave him a strange challenge. I told him, "Tomorrow, I want you to make 3 mistakes on purpose."
On purpose?
Yes. He laughed. I said, "Your goal is not perfect English. Your goal is to survive being imperfect." The next day, he spoke. He made mistakes. Nobody laughed. Nobody walked out of the room. Nobody said, "Daniel, we have discovered the terrible truth."
That he was human?
Exactly. And something changed. Not his grammar, his relationship with mistakes. For the next month, I gave him one simple rule. Speak before you feel ready. At first, he hated it. Then something surprising happened.
What changed?
He stopped monitoring every sentence. Before, Daniel would think, "Is this tense correct? Should I use this preposition? Is my pronunciation perfect?" By the time he finished thinking, the conversation had moved on. But once he accepted mistakes, he became more present. He started telling stories. He started asking questions. He started making jokes. And 3 months later, he volunteered to give a short presentation in English.
Was he nervous?
Very nervous. His hands were shaking. He forgot one sentence. He mispronounced a word. And afterward, I asked him, "How do you feel?" He smiled and said, "I want to do it again."
That's interesting. The thing he avoided for years became something he wanted to repeat.
Because uncertainty becomes less frightening after experience. That's why trying something new is so important. The first time you do something, your brain has very little evidence. It imagines disasters. But after you do it and survive, the next attempt feels slightly easier, then easier again. Think about walking into a gym for the first time, starting university, driving in a new city, joining a new workplace, speaking to a foreigner. The first time can feel uncomfortable, but repetition turns unfamiliar situations into familiar ones, and familiar things slowly enter your comfort zone.
So the comfort zone itself isn't bad.
Correct. We all need comfort. Rest is important. Familiar routines are useful. The problem begins when comfort becomes a prison. When "I prefer this" becomes "I'm too afraid to try anything else." When you stop applying, stop learning, stop meeting people, stop speaking, stop taking opportunities, not because you don't want them, but because you are afraid of temporary discomfort. That's when your comfort zone becomes your enemy.
Temporary discomfort. I like that phrase.
Because most growth requires temporary discomfort. Learning feels awkward before it feels natural. Exercise feels difficult before your body becomes stronger. Speaking feels uncomfortable before confidence develops. But there is another kind of discomfort people often confuse with growth, and knowing the difference is extremely important.
You mean not every uncomfortable situation is good?
Exactly. Step out of your comfort zone does not mean ignore common sense. It doesn't mean put yourself in unsafe situations. It doesn't mean tolerate harmful behavior. And it doesn't mean you must say yes to everything. Growth discomfort sounds like, "I've never done this before. I might make mistakes. This is challenging. People might see me learning." Danger is different. So when you're deciding whether to challenge yourself, ask, "Is this unsafe?" or "Is this simply unfamiliar?" Those are very different questions.
Can we apply that to speaking English publicly?
Absolutely. Imagine you're sitting in a safe classroom. Your teacher asks for volunteers. You feel your heart beating faster. You think, "I don't want to speak." Ask yourself, am I in danger? No. Could I feel embarrassed? Possibly. Could I make a mistake? Definitely. Could this help me grow? Yes. That is a perfect comfort zone challenge.
What if I can't think of what to say?
Prepare one rescue phrase. For example, "Give me a second to think." "Let me try again." "I'm not sure how to say this, but..." "Could you repeat the question?" These expressions give you time, and they make real conversations much easier.
I'm not sure how to say this, but, because I often know the idea, but not the exact English.
Exactly, and that's real communication. You don't need a perfect sentence every time. You need enough language to keep moving. Now, Sarah, before we move toward the final lesson, I want to ask you something. What do you think is the biggest secret of people who constantly grow?
Maybe they're more confident.
That's what most people think, but the real answer is almost the opposite.
What's the answer?
They are willing to be beginners. Think about that. A lot of adults hate being beginners. We like being competent. We like knowing what we're doing. We like looking intelligent. So when we see something new, we sometimes avoid it because we know we'll be bad at first. A new language, a new sport, a new skill, a new job, a new technology. We don't want to look foolish. But every expert you admire once looked foolish. Every fluent English speaker once searched for basic words. Every great musician once played badly. Every confident public speaker once felt nervous. You cannot skip the beginner stage.
So sometimes our ego is protecting the comfort zone too.
Very often. And here's a sentence worth remembering. You don't need permission to be bad at something new. Being bad at the beginning is normal. The real problem is expecting beginner effort to produce expert performance.
That's probably why people quit. They try something twice and think, "I'm terrible at this."
Exactly. Instead, change the sentence. Don't say, "I'm terrible at speaking English."
Say, I'm learning to speak English. Don't say, I can't speak in public. Say, I'm learning how to speak in public. Don't say, I'm not confident. Say, I'm building confidence. Language affects identity, and identity affects behavior.
Let's practice the 3 expressions again.
Good idea. First, step out of your comfort zone. Example, if you want to grow, sometimes you have to step out of your comfort zone.
If you want to improve your English, step out of your comfort zone and speak.
Excellent. Second, challenge yourself. I challenge myself to do one difficult thing every week.
I'm challenging myself to speak English for 15 minutes every day.
Perfect. Third, try something new. You might discover a new talent if you try something new.
This weekend, I'm going to try something new.
Now let's make these expressions part of one natural conversation.
Okay.
Sarah, why don't you join the English discussion group?
I'm nervous because I don't know anyone there.
That's exactly why you should step out of your comfort zone.
You're right. I need to challenge myself.
And who knows, you might enjoy it.
Okay, I'll try something new.
Perfect. But we still haven't answered the most difficult question. What do you do when you try something new and it goes badly?
Yes, because motivational advice always sounds great until you fail.
Exactly. Let's say you finally speak English in public. You forget words. Your grammar is messy. Someone doesn't understand you. And afterward you think, I knew I shouldn't have done that. That moment matters because your brain wants to turn one uncomfortable experience into a permanent rule. I failed once, so I shouldn't try again. But one bad experience is not evidence that you cannot do something. It's feedback. Ask, what went wrong? What can I improve? What should I do differently next time? Maybe you spoke too quickly. Maybe you needed more preparation. Maybe your vocabulary was too complicated. Maybe you just need more practice.
So failure becomes information.
Exactly. And if you treat failure as information, it loses some of its emotional power. Imagine a child learning to walk. The child falls. Would you say, well, that's it. Walking clearly isn't your thing.
Of course not. You expect the child to fall. Why don't we give ourselves the same permission when learning?
Somehow, adults expect themselves to perform perfectly while doing something they have almost never practiced. That's unreasonable.
I think many English learners compare their first attempts to someone else's 10th year.
Exactly. And comparison makes the comfort zone attractive. You hear someone speaking fluent English and think, I could never sound like that. But you are seeing the result, not the awkward years before the result. Instead of asking, why am I not as good as them? Ask, am I better than I was 3 months ago? That's a fairer comparison. And there's one final exercise I want everyone listening to do. Not tomorrow, not next month, today.
What is it?
I call it the 24-hour comfort zone challenge. Choose one small thing you've been avoiding because it feels uncomfortable. Not dangerous, just uncomfortable. Maybe speak English to someone for 2 minutes. Ask a question in class. Record a 1-minute English video. Call someone instead of sending a text. Introduce yourself to a new person. Share your opinion in a meeting. Apply for an opportunity you've been thinking about. Try a new exercise. Visit a new place. Learn something you've always believed was not for you. Then use these 3 sentences. Sentence 1. I am going to step out of my comfort zone by... Complete it. Sentence 2. I will challenge myself to... Complete it. Sentence 3. Today I will try something new. I will... Complete it.
Let me try. I am going to step out of my comfort zone by speaking more English at work. I will challenge myself to start one conversation in English. And today I will try something new. I will send my friend an English voice message instead of writing.
Perfect. Small, specific, possible. That's how change begins. Not with a huge emotional promise like, from tomorrow I will become completely fearless, but with one action that tells your brain, I can do uncomfortable things. And every time you prove that to yourself, your identity changes a little. You stop seeing yourself as someone who always avoids difficult things. You start becoming someone who tries.
Alex, I think I've realized something. The comfort zone feels like it's protecting us, but sometimes it's protecting us from the exact experiences we need.
Exactly. Your comfort zone protects you from embarrassment, but it may also protect you from confidence. It protects you from failure, but it may also protect you from success. It protects you from rejection, but it may also protect you from connection. It protects you from looking like a beginner, but it may also prevent you from ever becoming an expert. And that's why comfort can become dangerous. Not because comfort itself is bad, but because a comfortable life can slowly become a smaller life. One less conversation, one less opportunity, one less risk, one less dream. Until eventually, you look around and realize nothing terrible happened to you, but nothing extraordinary happened either.
That's probably the saddest part. Not failing, but wondering what might have happened if you had tried.
Exactly. Failure usually gives you an answer. Regret leaves you with a question. What if? And sometimes that question stays for years. So the next time fear says, "Don't do this, you've never done it before," try answering, "Exactly. That's why I need to try."
I think today's conversation changed the way I see fear. Before, I thought feeling nervous meant I wasn't ready. Now, I think maybe nervousness sometimes means I'm standing close to something that could help me grow.
That's a beautiful way to put it. You do not need to become fearless today. You don't need to transform your entire life overnight. You only need one small act of courage. One conversation, one question, one attempt, one new experience. Your English will not improve because you waited until you felt ready. Your confidence will not grow because you stayed where everything felt easy. Growth begins at the edge of what feels familiar. So remember these 3 expressions. Step out of your comfort zone, challenge yourself, try something new, and more importantly, live them.
Before you leave, write one sentence in the comments. Today, I will step out of my comfort zone by, then complete it with your own challenge.
And don't choose something impressive. Choose something real. Something small enough that you can actually do it. Because your life rarely changes in one giant moment. It changes through small decisions repeated again and again. The decision to speak instead of staying silent. To try instead of wondering. To begin instead of waiting. Your comfort zone may feel safe, but your future is probably waiting somewhere outside it. Keep listening. Keep learning. Keep challenging yourself. And when fear says, "Stay where you are," take one small step forward.
If today's conversation helped you, share your biggest English challenge in the comments. What's the one thing you've been too comfortable to try?
And practice these lessons with us every day on Daily English.
We'll see you tomorrow.